Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Davis, I'm interested in your perspective today as to what lessons we learned that we really haven't implemented change to address from this tragedy. You look back and say, okay, we've done a better job perhaps in coordinating with the FBI and getting information from the FBI to local law enforcement. But the response to the marathon bombing was seen as being effective by and large, but there are certainly lessons to be that were considered that we've really not fully acted upon. And I wonder if you were to say, what are the priorities? What are the things we really ought to do differently? Where have we not stepped up as far as we should have from the things we did learn? And I'm going to let each of the individuals respond to that same question. I'm putting you on the spot first, in part because of our relationship. But what are we missing? What should we be doing that we really are not doing as a result of what we learned from that tragic event?
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. Kerry said exactly what I think. The FBI made enormous strides just after this incident. I testified, I met with Director Mueller, and they responded quickly, and the JTTFs acted or were more effective afterwards because of the changes that the Bureau put in place. We all have respect for each other. We work very closely together on these issues. But I see a very interesting situation developing now with an uncertainty about what police tactics are appropriate. I've just spent 2 days with police chiefs from all over the country at Harvard, and there's a continuing sort of message that we don't want to go near any sensitive technologies because of the backlash we could get from it. So there's really an uncertainty as to what's proper. And there are some jurisdictions, some in Massachusetts, that at the local level have stopped police from using things like facial recognition technology or access to camera technology. And I understand the concerns about privacy in those situations, but we must remember as a government that the police are the security team for the poor people in our cities. And it's scary to think that a political body has eliminated the use of an effective tool to solve crime at the local level when people who are the people I work with in the Fortune 500 companies can purchase the technology and use it. It's just, that's really the uncertainty of what a police department should be doing in this realm on the technology side needs a clear debate and direction. I think that's one of the biggest impediments that I see.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Sleeper.
Thank you, Senator. I'll follow very closely behind Ed's comments. Today, we are awash in threats in this country, whether they're terrorism threats, counterintelligence threats, threats on social media, deep, dark web, people claiming to be belonging to some type of an ideology or a grievance they hold. The FBI's National Threat Operations Center receives about 3,000 threats a day that they have to mitigate with their state and local partners. On top of that, we have the swatting calls that every state's been experiencing across the country. Our responders are tired, they're stretched thin, we have resource concerns. So the only way for us to effectively mitigate that is to be smarter, is to use tools and technology to be able to mitigate those threats, to use intelligence and analysis as effectively as we possibly can in order to mitigate those threats. We had a remarkable focus post 9/11, federal, state, and local partners coming together across the broad public safety spectrum after Boston. Unfortunately, I'm going to say again, because of COVID, we've, I won't say ground to a halt, but many critical functions and meetings that should be taking place to stay ahead of the threat are not happening. That would be my response.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Serino?
Along the same lines is that lack of social cohesion, partly because of COVID. After from 10 years ago, after the Boston Marathon bombings, we saw people coming together. And then COVID happened, we started to see that fragmentation. And we started to see the inability. You can do certain meetings on Zoom, and that's great, but there's nothing like having that cup of coffee or perhaps an adult beverage sometime with a counterpart and understanding their issues and understanding how to come together. I think that also as we start to look at the workforce, we are losing people, you know, in all across public safety, across public health, and across emergency management in hospitals. Unless we start to really look at how we can start to change the paradigm to people look at service in this country. You know, I had the opportunity, was at FEMA, we started something called FEMA Corps for 18 to 24-year-olds to do a year of service. Imagine doing some service in public safety, or doing service in emergency management, or public health, and taking that opportunity to give people, whether it's a gap year or when they're in college or after college, in that age group, to do a year of service, to make that something that then will help us. We need teachers across the board. So how do we actually start to look at all those issues around the workforce and create something that's an opportunity for young people to actually do service to the country, because we are seeing such a need. That, unfortunately, is going to take an investment. It's going to face investment of time. It's going to take investment in money, and it's going to take investment in people. But without the people, we are not going to be able to respond to crisis. As both Ed and Kerry have mentioned, crises are coming. We see polycrisis every 15 days now. There's a major disaster in this country. Every 15 days. And it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So we have to start to address those issues now.
Thank you. I'll turn back to the chair, and because I notice we have another member that has some questions, and I'll get my chance again in just a moment.